Okay, so here we are, finally getting into our dinosaurs. This is a really lovely piece of paleo art from like late Triassic Europe, kind of a Germany-Poland combo here in this image. The animal on the right is Plateosaurus, one of the first really, really quite large dinosaurs that's in the long neck dinosaur group. We're going to talk about them today. And then who's that rumbling herd crossing the river? Yeah, there's big Dicynodonts. You guys learned about these therapsids that survived the end Permian extinction. Well, there's still great big Dicynodonts all the way through the end of the Triassic. So there are ecosystems. This one from Europe, kind of a combination, like I said, of Poland and Germany. We can get a good, really good handle on the fact that there's like pretty big dinosaurs and pretty big Dicynodonts like right next to each other. And this is 30, 40 million years after the extinction event. So, remember therapsids as we move forward, because for a while they're hanging out with the dinosaurs. Okay, enough of that. This is where we actually left off on Tuesday. We didn't quite finish what I was going to be talking about on Tuesday, which is the pterosaurs. So just to refresh yourself, we're within the crown group Archosauria. There's crocodile archosaurs. Today's crocodiles are the only living members of that group. And birdline archosaurs, today's birds, which are a very, very, very derived kind of dinosaur, are the only living members of the birdline archosaurs today. But back in the Triassic, there's all of this body plan diversity, all of this rapid radiation. You can see so many of our gray stratigraphic bars for the occurrence of these different clades goes really far back, some of them to within a few million years of the end Permian mass extinction. So many of these lineages we've been talking about clearly are evolving in the near aftermath of this extinction event, which is really cool. So on the dinosaur side of things, on the bird side of archosaurs, we have the dinosaurs themselves, which is what we're going to talk about today. But there's also a couple cool groups, including a really important one called pterosaurs, pterodactyls, other flying vertebrates, the first time vertebrates evolved flight. On Tuesday, you guys nailed it. Birds, bats, pterosaurs, those are the three for sure evolutions of like powered flight that happen in vertebrates. Pterosaurs do it first. You're going to learn about birds next week. They do it second. You won't learn about bats for a while still. They do it third. And then insects did it before anybody. I have just one synapomorphy. I wanted to give you guys four pterosauria, which we didn't quite get to that on Tuesday. So I want to give it to you real quick before we jump into the dinos. And that synapomorphy for pterosaurs is that they have this membranous wing. Kind of obvious, right? So this is the anatomy of a pterosaur's wing. I know you were kind of inferring it from the comparative anatomy, homology, and convergence statements we were trying to write on Tuesday. But how a pterosaur structures its wing, really similar to birds and bats in the sense that there's homologous bones in the forelimb. The wing is on the forelimb, the front arm, that makes sense, the front limb. Humerus, radius ulna, hand bones, that's the same skeleton. But these pterosaurs are making a wing in a way that later birds, and then after that, bats definitely don't do, where they have pretty normal fingers on several digits, but then digit 4 is like the entirety of the wing structure. Just to make that really clear. Hand, humerus, radius ulna, metacarpals, finger, and then this also a finger. And they have skin stretching between the tip of that finger and their ankles, actually. And that's that flying surface they use to fly around. Almost all of the like actual early fossils of animals that we can recognize as pterosaurs have this membranous wing or have the anatomy to let us infer that they have that membranous wing. And so that's a very cool thing. But I'm going to show you that when it comes to bats later in time, and when it comes to pterosaurs here in the Triassic, we often only have fossils of animals we can recognize as pterosaurs or bats. And so a natural question for you guys might be like, right, pterosaurs have wings, I get it. But like, how does a wing evolve in the first place? Seems like a lot of very complicated anatomy, and I would kind of want to see how a pterosaur wing shows up. What's cool is for birds, we can actually show you almost all those steps. Very exciting. Bats and pterosaurs, it's a lot harder, and that's interesting. Might have to do with the patterns of how the rocks are preserved. But I wanted to show you some of these animals. Here's a really wonderful Triassic fossil of an early pterosaur. You can see its little fingers right there, and then its very long finger that's going off the block. Recently, maybe the last 5-6 years or so, one clade of archosaurs, these guys called Lycurpetids, they used to be kind of thought to be dinosaur cousins. It's now very, very convincing that they are the outgroup to pterosaurs. None of them have wings. but they do kind of have big hands and they're up on two legs in some cases, which is really interesting. But maybe I'll just give you a second to like look at these early pterosaurs. This is basically what we have right now. Arcticodactylus is one of the earliest. It's so small. The whole animal's like that big. So maybe just look at these things. What seems cool or weird or interesting about these early pterosaurs and their probable cousins? Let's chat with each other about that real quick. Yeah. Lucky babies. Maybe even early skeletons from So I won't say too much because I want to jump into the dinosaur stuff today, but these animals are really kind of intriguing. A lot of them have very complicated dentitions. Like Eudimorphodon has cusped teeth, sharp teeth, big teeth, all kinds of stuff happening in its mouth. Same with this one here. And so, like I said, a lot of these ones that we can identify as true pterosaurs already fully have their wings. Animals like this one, Dromomeron here, seems to have great big hands. Some of these animals definitely seem to have the sort of proportions in their hands and feet that we see today amongst climbing. We say scansorial lizards and mammals, like how a squirrel or certain lizards can like run up a tree. A lot of these animals have the same proportions as that. And so it's like, okay, so is there arboreal, a tree-based origin for pterosaur flight? That's a really great idea. Sounds good. And so we have animals that seem to have a lot of features, like details of their brains, for instance, between this animal and this animal. And then this one seems to have adaptations to be up in the trees. This one certainly has wings. So like there's a little bit of a connect the dots that we don't have the complete picture yet, but it's really, really interesting. I wanted to show you guys this. This is just a sketch that this artist, I use this guy's art all the time, Gabriel Gueto, trying to talk about like the possibilities. We definitely have fossils of this. We definitely have fossils of this. We definitely have fossils of this. I've never seen anything like that. But you can imagine, almost as like a hypothesis making, that that third and fourth type of animal might be something we find someday. Oftentimes in Earth history, we're able to look at big transitions in vertebrate evolution and imagine possible ways the pretty intense anatomy could evolve. And then we look. So Tiktaalik, back in the Devonian, is a really famous example where people had Ichthyostega and they had these fishes like Eusthenopteron. And they said, you know, there must be somewhere in these Devonian freshwater rocks, a kind of fishy thing that like has some more limb, but not all the way. And then here's Tiktaalik with elbows and no fingers, a neck, eyes on top. Some parts were a surprise, some parts weren't. But it was hypothesis driven looking for fossils. And so I can tell you right now, there are people who work in the Triassic desperately trying to figure out, do we already have bones from animals like this and we just didn't realize that? Or where should we look if we want to find them? Because like I said, known to science, known to science, known to science. That's a possibility there, those two. Isn't that fun? I'm going to be able to show you in dinosaur evolution later, especially like I said, when it comes to birds, we have almost all of those. And it can be like, I think I get it. Bats, though, are just like these pterosaurs. Bat origins are also very cloudy. Interesting. Okay, it's dinosaur time. I'm excited about it. I make no apologies. So this is a clade of animals. It's a node on the tree of life. It's within reptiles or sauria, if you want to say that. These, for whatever reason, and we could get distracted by the pop nature of how humans work, this clade of animals has a particular hold on the imaginations of people, but it is just a node on the tree of life. But certainly you guys probably, maybe you don't have anything. Maybe you have a 4-year-old in your house. Maybe you are that 4-year-old and now you're not 4 years old. I don't know. But I expect that in this room, there's kind of a lot of like pre-existing content knowledge on dinosaurs. And so do me a favor, enjoy yourself. This is another wonderful piece of art by a different paleo artist. Who do you recognize up here? What do you know up here? What do we want to talk about when we talk about dinosaur evolution? Because we're going to do it today and all next week, and then the week after that too. So, okay, talk to each other.
What are the ones with the arm backs? There's
like skeleton on it. It's not, I don't think it's it might not be it. Yeah, it looks like a model. I don't think it is, but the ones with the curious exactly. I'm not really ever messaging on no, this little guy. The little guy, yeah, under the stegosaurus. Oh, we got the he's got. Yeah, I'm not sure what the correct terminology is for those guys. That's crazy, but it's all done. So back in the day, and you have those raptors at the bottom. Oh, there's 1,000 turns in bottom right. Also, T-Rex is the yellow button. What those things like T-Rex driven? It's just snowing, it's not on sticks and the very they kind of like that's a T-Rex. Yeah, it's like that. Pretty many studies on it's too funny. I mean, it's all I recognize. Yeah.
All right, what kind of things are we talking about here? This is very open-ended on my part.
Sorry, what was that? You said that?
Just what kind of things are we talking about? How are we enjoying ourselves? If we're enjoying ourselves at all. Maybe you hate this. I don't know. But yeah, Trevor.
I was talking about T-Rex, and it's very surprising.
Do you think I could get like bat 1,000 on you guys knowing which one T-Rex is?
I think so.
Okay, good. I bet you guys could do it. Some of them maybe you're like, I don't know, but I bet you know which one T-Rex is. Okay, so what were you talking about with T-Rex?
I was talking about a study that came out recently this year where they I forgot the lead researcher's name, but like they were looking at growth series curves in T-Rex, and they were like thinking that it could live to be like 40 years old whereas previous studies suggested that it lived way shorter than that.
Yeah, so T-Rex is actually a really, really popular animal. You guys can come to your own conclusions on why that is. But many fossils of it have been hunted and hunted and hunted for. It's a very rare animal in its ecosystem, as you would hopefully imagine for a very huge apex predator. There are not herds of them running around back in their ecosystems, probably. But we know a lot about Tyrannosaurus Rex, and that's a binomial. You guys are Homo sapiens. That's Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's all it is, right? It's another one of those, but it's a really famous one. I think T-Rex obviously is like the #1 celebrity dinosaur. That's not my opinion. There's like research that's done that. I think like if you watch like Old Bill Nye, if you watch Nova on PBS today, there's going to be like a spinning microscope and a DNA helix and a T-Rex skull and whatever else, right? For whatever reason, this animal is like a pop emblem for like science as an endeavor. Think about it like that. It's very cool. So yes, things like growth structure, Tyrannosaurus Rex, population predictions, Tyrannosaurus Rex, jaw mechanics, Tyrannosaurus Rex. This animal is like one of these, like, for better or for worse, ambassador dinosaurs, ambassador animals for like all of paleontology, which is very cool. All right, what are things people talking about? Yeah, Eden.
I was talking about the birds.
Where are the birds?
On top of dinosaurs' heads.
Oh, but they're dinosaurs too. I see 1, 2, 3, 4. These two. Do you guys recognize these two?
A crow?
Yeah, it's a crow and a song sparrow. We can go probably find both of those right now if we wanted to. They're definitely both in Pocatello right now. That one's extinct and that one's extinct. You might not know which ones those are, but we'll talk about them. Birds being dinosaurs. I heard birds are related to dinosaurs. I heard birds are descended from dinosaurs. Both true, but also just factually, they also just are dinosaurs. Penguins and hummingbirds and chicken nuggets are dinosaurs, just like everything here is also a dinosaur, which is definitely just the truth. It's just how phylogeny works. The node is Dinosauria. Birds are in that node. Birds are also gnathostomes and vertebrates. It's just another node. But usually when people mean dinosaur, they mean lowercase d and they mean these ones. That's okay. We can deal with that. What else are people talking about? Yeah.
It's one of the ones in between the Stegosaurus and T-Rex that is one of them.
Stegosaurus, everyone knows Stegosaurus, right? I bet I could have gotten 1,000 on that one too, probably. Okay. Yeah, so this one here is it's one of these herbivorous Ornithischian, I'll say, dinosaurs. It's not probably technically iguanodon, but it's not far from iguanodon. Yeah, I actually don't know which one that's supposed to be. If I had to guess, I think it's Altorhinus, which has a tall nose. But I don't know. I don't actually know. I don't know which dinosaur, which ones each one's supposed to be. I have very strong ideas for all of them, but I'm not 100% on some of them. Okay. What other things people talking about? Dinosaurs have a lot going on. I see you, but I'm gonna wait. I see you too, and I'm gonna wait. There we go, Brooklyn. What's up?
Feathers down on things on the ground.
Yeah, feathers, quills that aren't maybe feathers, but they're quills. Interesting. Anything you want to say about that?
Just that it's cool that they're not the birds in the sky, they're friends.
You guys are. Oof. It's really like 1996 that paleontology starts to be like, oh, because there's a lot of fossils start pouring out of what's now northeastern China of a lot of animals that are definitely, obviously, this kind of dinosaur with feathers on them. So we've had bird fossils for a long time. We've had dinosaur fossils for a long time. They're all Archosauri kind of guys. But you can look at papers from the 80s where like birds just have an arrow that goes like, just disappears somewhere into the Triassic because nobody wanted to plug them into dinosaurs too strongly. We now know exactly where birds go within one lineage of dinosaurs, and there's tons and tons and tons of not bird dinosaurs that are totally covered in feathers, which is very cool and helpful when you're trying to be like, is that really what happened? Feathers have a very special set of situations they require to be preserved as fossils, kind of like fur, kind of like any soft tissue. But once you find it, it's like, okay. And like we've learned, this is not a bird, and this is not a bird, but it definitely has a bunch of feathers and sits on a nest full of eggs and does all this stuff that's like, interesting. So that's cool. Anything else people want to say? Yeah, Caden?
One thing that I was at was the posture of
Yeah.
long necks.
Yeah. What about the posture of the long necked
I know
one?
it's controversial. It's a very controversial topic of like, do they stand with their heads like coming straight up like their necks are?
Oh, okay.
Something like that, or maybe there's like the swan shape idea where it's kind of like an S. And
How much of this is happening? If you
Yeah.
watch Fantasia in 1940, like all the sauropods are like, how much of it is this? How much of it is this? How much is this? There's a lot of physiological questions. Sauropods are really great. We're going to talk about them being challenges to how people who study modern day biology understand comparative anatomy. There's people who are like, if this neck is 35 feet vertical, how is the heart getting blood to the brain? It's a great question. So you can find papers where people are like, the heart would have to be bigger than the rib cage in order to work. Maybe. I would argue probably you need to think about what other adaptations there could be. Giraffes definitely have very weird vasculature compared to other very close relatives because they have long necks. So what other things might these dinosaurs be doing? Maybe it's all soft tissue, but it's a great thing to think about. Famously, there's people even recently who are like the biggest of the long neck dinosaurs are too big to walk around on land. Okay, do you want to see a couple hundred different ways where we have like track sites of them walking around? Obviously, our imaginations are what's limited, and these are a very different kind of organism than we know. I think this is not my idea. This is a generally very, I think, popular for good reason idea. Dinosaurs are a really good mix of like understandable and familiar with like kind of fantastical dragon monster. And so it lets you play with these ideas in a scientific way that I think is totally irresistible to some people. I think that's why these are such fun animals. I can show you guys weird crocodiles and weird therapsids all day, and you'll probably be like, that's really cool. But there's like an X factor here that I can't put my finger on. That's okay. Oh, I already said all that. It's just another node on the tree of life, but it's a pretty sweet one. And every living bird today is a dinosaur. There's my like big old take homes for this clade. So, okay, they do fit onto our tree though. They are archosaurs on the birdline side. There's these clades here. We're not going to talk about this one at all, unfortunately. LOL. We're going to talk about this clade, Dinosauria, I, which is, again, one of the nodes on the tree of life. And you better believe I've got a synapomorphy for you guys that sets dinosaurs apart. Dinosaurs, all the earliest members of all the major clades, are bipeds. So bipedality, meaning up on your back legs, is the plesiomorphic condition, the ancestral condition for Dinosauria. Now, It's really exciting times in Triassic science, and so some people are playing with this just a little bit. That group I skipped is involved, but we're not going to worry about that today. Bipedality. So what you're seeing here on this silhouette are three early dinosaurs. They all occur in the same place, Argentina. They all occur at the same time, 235 million years ago or so. This and this and this are all members of the three major dinosaur groups, and all of them are up on three legs, or sorry, two legs. So the one in the middle there is related to the theropod dinosaurs we're going to talk about. The one in the front there is related to the long-necked dinosaurs, sauropods, that we're going to talk about. And the one in the back there is related to the Ornithischian dinosaurs, so a lot of the like horns, duckbills, armor type dinosaurs. And so the earliest members are bipeds. Later animals evolve quadrupedality. They get really large, usually, and then drop down and are on all fours. This animal is an obligate quadruped. I think it's interesting. 4 feet, just like a lizard, just like a crocodile, but 4 feet after a stage of bipedality, back to 4 feet. So anytime you see a quadrupedal dinosaur, it's secondarily quadrupedal, which I think is kind of fun. Tetrapods, amniotes, reptiles, quadruped. Dinosaurs, biped. If you're a quadrupedal dinosaur, it's because you returned to that condition. It's kind of a fun thing we can track through their evolution. Bipedality, you're going to see all throughout dinosaur evolution. Here's like a little bit of an overview of biodiversity. I'm not going to focus in on anything here, but just in case you've never seen a diagram like this before, Dinosauria is a node, and there's two kind of great big clades of dinosaurs. This figure is from the 90s, but does a good job summarizing this kind of split. These animals all have a certain hip structure that I'm going to show you. This animals all have a certain hip structure, but the ones on this side, it's an inherited hip structure, whereas these ones have a derived new kind of hip structure. But it was something that was recognized back in the 1800s, and people have been using it to break dinosaurs into these two big groups ever since. The left-hand side here, you can see these are these Ornithischian dinosaurs, horned dinosaurs, bonehead dinosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs, armored dinosaurs, a bunch of other weird stuff. Whereas the other side, we say are Saurischian dinosaurs. You're going to hear all these words a lot. Long-necked dinosaurs are part of it, and then all the meat-eating dinosaurs, although, well, I should just say all the like bipedal, mostly carnivorous dinosaurs, including birds. And so the birds are a part of the Saurischian dinosaur clade and the meat-eating theropod dinosaur lineage. And so again, this is just an overview because these are animals I'm sure you've heard of before and seen before, and I'm going to give you this like phylogenetic context before we just jump all the way in. Okay, so we got bipedality here, and you can see there's three clades: Sauropoda, Sauropodomorpha, sorry, theropoda, and then way up there's Ornithischians. Look at the Triassic, look at the distribution of those dinosaur fossils that we actually have in museum collections. I'll let you think about that for a second. But first, we're going to talk about these Saurischian dinosaurs. So that was the right-hand side of the tree. Saurischian dinosaurs, like I said, are the Sauropodomorph dinosaurs. So those are going to lead to the long necks that are very huge later in Earth history. And then also these other theropods. But we're going to start with these Sauropodomorphs. These fossils here are on this lineage that go to long-necked dinosaurs. Here's a lot of them: Burulestes, Eoraptor, Saturnalia, Panphagia. These are cutie patootie little animals. Enjoy yourself. What seems cool or interesting about these earliest long-necked dinosaur members? Chat with each other about that.
Just fair. Basically. So. Yeah, but I can kind of nuts. Like Eoraptor is really interesting. It's like a little news there. I mean, we have really tough lab. Yeah, easy for it. Yeah. It does that. You should have skeletal structure going to us. It's like it's something. Yeah, they're like these. That's right. Yeah, I think that's what and actually most times their heel doesn't I don't think humans are just weirdos.
Okay, what are our groups talking about here with these guys? Yeah.
It's like their front legs like just barely came off the ground, not that long there.
Oh, okay. So yeah, relatively large forelimbs we could definitely maybe infer. Yep. They've got really big, a lot of them have really quite big claws on their hands. It's just interesting. What else? Yeah, Trevor?
Eoraptor is a meat eater, and I'm pretty sure all the other guys are plant eaters.
Eoraptor has pretty sharp teeth. This is literally the fossil of this animal, Borealis. You want to tell me about these teeth real quick? Talk to your neighbors about these teeth. These teeth are pointy or sharp. They are recurved, which means they go backwards. They curve posteriorly. They have serrations on them, like any good archosauriform would have. And so Borealis, when it got published, everyone was like, oh, fantastic, because it has a bunch of features in other parts of its skeleton that let us know it's a sauropodomorph, but it's like totally a little bipedal meat eater. And you're like, your cousins are the giant, long-necked dinosaurs. And so this basal condition, this early condition for dinosaurs is like little bipedal carnivores. We've got it for almost all the clades. And then they later become other things. That's really great. That's really fun. I viscerally remember when this figure was published because like that's a Sauropodomorphs, premacula and maxilla. It's one of the earliest ones possible. Very cool. I like that they're bipedal. That's the inherited condition. I like that they're little carnivores, also the inherited condition. Some of these we have partial skulls for or whole skulls for. And yeah, they start to get adaptations that are like probably omnivorous, maybe even getting to be truly herbivorous really quickly. But still, some of them are not. So there it is. And there's me being objective and saying they're so cool. Okay. Here's like really a lot of the sauropodomorph diversity of the Triassic. So very quickly after they show up, they start to get large. All these animals here are to scale with this person. So you can kind of see, here's some of the ones you just saw. And then here's later Triassic sauropodomorphs. There's some really nice pictures here. So here's the Pterosaurus from the American Southwest. I know this is a lot of art, but I did it on purpose. Here's another one of these early long-necked dinosaurs from the late part of the Triassic. You already met Phylogenetics, which is one of the carnivorous animals in the same habitat. But okay, so now that you saw those teeny little first ones, here's these other ones. What are you noticing? What are some patterns? What should we talk about? There's kind of a bunch, but I'd just like you to look.
They don't have the trees. They have the wrong. My fish needs his own bites like this fish characters. So it's it's like some of them. Also not making also don't say it's yeah. It's right when good morning. I like those. They're so they're ideas. Fascinating. Oh, okay. Okay.
All right, so what are some things people are thinking about, talking about? There's just a lot of fun stuff in here. Where are you guys talking about, you two?
Really heavy.
They sure do look like they're gonna fall over, but like they have yes, white massive tails. They have all this musculature. There's evidence, of course, that maybe they could like go down a little bit, but they have hands that turn inward and they have just gigantic claws on their hands that are pretty sharp. So they're not like walking all day on these claws. So they're walking, they have their hands kind of like this, probably. Fun. Like this is a really crazy thing, right? Get out your time machine. It's like, that's cool. All right, what else? What are you guys talking about?
Oh,
Not Trevor, you two. No offense, Trevor.
not taken.
Yeah, most of them are bipeds except two of them. This little one, well, it's not that little. I don't know if you think it's little or not. This, I don't know, cow, small cow size one. uniquely seems to truly do go down on all fours. These ones are humongous, bipedal. This one is on all fours. So there's definitely some play. There's different lineages that are doing it. There's actually a ton of clades that I'm not showing you. I'm just reducing this to this like paraphyletic grade, pro-sauropods. There's several kinds of sauropodomorph lineages, and several of them flirt with going down and actually committing to being quadrupeds, even if they don't get big. This one for sure is a quadruped, and it's not huge. This one definitely huge, definitely not. So they're playing with this evolutionarily, which is really cool. I just like you to see this because long-necked dinosaurs are so famous. Driving down the highway, you'll see them at gas stations, of course. And like that morphology, that iconic shape does show up and is really important throughout the whole Mesozoic. But in the Triassic, there's a lot of other kinds of sauropodomorph body shapes. Everybody here, except for those first ones, is almost certainly an herbivore, if maybe a teeny bit omnivore, but like really strong adaptations in their teeth, clearly for herbivory. One thing that I like about these animals for you guys to think about is that ecologically, with these great big arms with claws and these long necks and delicate skulls, they have like a little bit of a bend in their lower jaw. They have these leafy shaped teeth. Some people reconstruct them because we have some of the musculature back here as having like pretty big tongues. These animals are doing something that in 190 million more years, we're going to see sloths do, like giant sloths, where they're probably just like grabbing branches and they have their like long necks and just like pulling branches to themselves and just eating all day. It's so cool. Not what you expect from later long neck dinosaurs, but that Cerosaurus is definitely like, give me that hand, give me that face, give me that tongue. That's a sloth, but it's not a sloth, it's a dinosaur. Fun. All right, here's the earliest of the meat-eating dinosaur lineage. I don't like to say meat-eating dinosaur because like many of these animals eat whatever they want. But these are the theropods. And so we're going to return to these guys when we do bird evolution, but I wanted you to take in, these are some of the most famous early theropod dinosaurs, the meat-eating dinosaur clade. Talk to your neighbor, make some observations about these guys.
So wise. So it's actually named down. Oh, yeah. It's the place. Yes. Is the like a thing that they found fossilized on Sauropod? Okay, I'm like there's no way.
It's something that makes me go.
So it looks like a turkey.
Yeah. Sure. I'll tell you what, you find a turkey fossil, you're not going to find any of that stuff.
Okay.
That's the skull of Zoopesaurus. This is the specimen. This is a beautiful artistic red.
Okay.
Anybody have anything to say? They're bipedal carnivores. It's the ancestral inherited condition. They retain the condition of being bipedal carnivores. Some of them start to get kind of large. There's specimens of this group, Herrerasaurs, that like that hip height is like getting to be like this. So like it's a big animal. And some of these ones, like Zoopesaurus here, this is a big old head, orbit. This is the lower temporal fenestra. This is that antorbital fenestra that all archosauriforms have. Nostrils up here. This skull's big. So you're starting to get animals that are like pushing 20 feet in the Triassic, big carnivores pushing 20 feet. Really interesting. Like I said, we're going to return for bird evolution because a lot of these early theropod lineages have like what is quite obviously raptorial forelimbs, really big claws on their hands that they could probably grab stuff with. Interesting. We'll talk about that though when we talk about birds. I just wanted you to see these theropods. Okay, so one side of Dinosauria is Sauriscia. The other side of Dinosauria is Ornithischian. What is the problem with the Ornithischian situation on my slide? Yes, Indigo. We got some Jurassic Ornithischians, and boy, oh boy, do we have Ornithischians after that. But everything we understand about the evolution of these animals is that they're sister to the Saurischian dinosaurs. But there's not really almost any Ornithischian fossils from the Triassic. I hope you have sirens in your head, like something's wrong here. But I do have two characters, two synapomorphies that unite Ornithischians that I want you guys to know. The first is that this is that whole way back in the 1880s that people broke up Dinosauria into Saurischian and Ornithischian hips. So you're seeing them shown here. A Saurischian hip, so you guys know what an ischium is called, it's like lizard hipped is what that translates to. Saur is lizard. And so what that means is you have your ilium, and then your pubis goes anteroventrally, and your ischium goes posteroventrally. They point in different directions. This is lizard hipped because this is also just the inherited reptile condition. An iguana or an alligator has this architecture where they all point in different directions. It's just what reptiles have. So Saurischian dinosaurs, like Sauropodomorphs, theropods, are retaining that basic hip structure that any reptile might have. Ornithischian dinosaurs are doing something different. Ask your person next to you just to say out loud what's different, so I don't have to say it by myself. All right, so what is it? What's different, you two? Between this one and this one? Okay, go for it.
The pubis is more like completely.
The pubis goes 100% the other direction. It goes posteroventrally. So the pubis and the ischium run in parallel backwards. Hilariously, today there's a group of vertebrates called birds that also have a pubis that points backwards. It goes under their ischium. And so this condition is the derived condition. And all these dinosaurs, horns and armors and duckbills, they have that ornithischian condition. That's literally what ornithischian means, is bird-hipped. That's a derived condition. This is the old condition, the ancestral condition, the plesiomorphic condition. Of course, this is hilarious because in the 1880s, these things got named, and now we know that birds are Saurischian dinosaurs. So somewhere in Saurischia, birds turned their hip into that. So birds are lizard-hipped dinosaurs, and Triceratops has nothing to do with birds, and it is a bird-hipped dinosaur. You can thank Seeley. I think 1888, 1880, something like that. Hey, it was a good observation at the time. Here's the other ornithischian feature. So that bird hip pubis is a derived feature. The other feature is they add a new bone to their skull that no other clade has at all, called a predentary. And so you might guess by the name predentary, it goes before the dentary. And so here it is on a great big duckbill. This is called a Montosaurus. There's this extra bone at the front, fused up right on the tip. And then this is an early Jurassic ornithischian, also with this little beaky bone. This bone does not have teeth in it. It is almost certainly always covered in a keratinous keratin beak. And so that predentary is a feature that every ornithischian you can find shares. So they have an extra bone on the midline of their lower jaw. Helps us recognize them. So here's the deal. The Ornithischian fossil record doesn't really start until the Jurassic. This should be upsetting to all of you. It certainly is upsetting to me. There is one animal that's probably an ornithischian. I showed it to you on that bipedality slide that's just as old as all the sauropods and theropods, but then we don't have anything after that. A lot of paleontology history, this is what people would find in the Triassic and say, I found some ornithischian fossils. They're isolated teeth. These are teeth that have little cusps on the sides. These are cusps that have different morphologies, different shapes, but almost always associated with eating a plant-based diet. To have cusps like that, an iguana's teeth are quite like that. And so that's very interesting. And so people were kind of like not very happy about it, but at least we had some fragments of ornithischians from the Triassic. And it's been the last like 15, 20 years that every single one of these teeth have been ripped away because we've realized they belong to like crocodile relatives and other weirdos that are also eating plants. So these isolated teeth would then get found in a crocodile relative jaw, and that crocodile jaw has like two of the kinds of teeth we were recognizing in the same jaw. It's like, so we still have some missing ornithischians from the Triassic. It's quite frustrating. I will tell you, this lineage called Thylosaurs, I've named one of these animals. This is a clade of dinosaur relatives that evolves to be plant eaters. And they run around on four legs in the Triassic. And the way most of our phylogenetic analyses work these days, we find these animals as outside Dinosauria, but you better believe that there's some people that are like, you know what? I'm not seeing good conclusive evidence that I totally am on board with that yet. but it's becoming an increasingly horrific problem where everybody's like, you cannot tell me we have 30 million years of no ornithischians. Oh, and by the way, we have 30 million years of these animals that do a lot of things ornithischians do later. But it's not there yet. And so it's one of these areas I like because it shows you how science is ongoing. When I teach this class in 2030, maybe I'll be like, anyway, don't worry about it. We figured it out. But for you guys, this is the deal. I like that. I think it's fun. All right. We have been talking about the Triassic now for like almost a week and a half. End Permian mass extinction is how the Triassic starts. We had all those marine reversions, those coral gaps, reef gaps, all that volcanic stuff, all those therapsids, amphibians, fishes, all these archosaurs, tons of cool stuff happening in the Triassic. But then at the end of the Triassic is another one of those big five. One of the mass extinctions that was identified back in the 80s and still one of the ones that ranks on those charts as one of the worst mass extinctions ever. So the Triassic is basically like 51 million years long, and there's a mass extinction on both sides. The worst one ever and one of the worst ones ever. Okay. So mass extinctions are not all the same. You've seen this chart before with the different severities of the extinctions. And so here's what I'm talking about. End Permian. And at the end of the Triassic, there's also an end Triassic mass extinction. Here is a really nice map of the Triassic. Pangea is at its height and starting to not be at its height in the Triassic. And so do me a favor, talk to your neighbors. What's going on Pangea? What are you starting to be able to see from these reconstructions of the supercontinent?
Breaks up north of grass and forms to it's called the way yeah, I'm pretty sure if I remember. At the very bottom, at least. Okay. Yeah, I got you.
So I'm eavesdropping. I'm hearing at least 2 or 3 groups talking about the fact that Pangea is a thing, and eventually we have to get to a world where there's no more Pangea. So Pangea starts to break up. And Pangea does start to break up. There are 2 supercontinents, this northern one and this southern one, that really become separate in the Jurassic. But what you are seeing right here, I love this so much. That is blue water, little bits of it. Those are rift valleys. There's rifting happening between these tectonic plates. South America, West Africa, North America. This is the breaking starting to happen. It starts here and then unzips this way. These rift lakes are baby Atlantic Ocean situation. The Atlantic Ocean is between Europe and Africa and South America. It's gonna open up all like this, but right now it starts up here in the north. These lakes have sediments in them. There are fossils in Virginia and New England of these lakes, awesome lakes that are like the big rift lakes in Africa today, but in the Triassic, as Pangea starts to rip apart. All this tectonic activity is being driven by volcanism. And so we have another situation where we have these large igneous provinces, probably right here, breaking up Pangea and starting this process and leading to another mass extinction event. So here's the table that you guys have seen now several times. I'll let you read, talk to your neighbors maybe for a second about the end Triassic, the kinds of evidences we actually have for this extinction. I think you'll see that there is a large igneous province. There is good signs of warming, probably acidification, a shift in the carbon isotopes, so that's primary productivity. We get things like toxic metal poisoning for sure. The end Triassic extinction is almost exactly like the end of the Permian extinction. It's just a little less severe. It's almost the same, but like with a little bit lower numbers when you have numbers. So it is another instance of volcanism. Yeah.
What does seismite mean?
Seismite at the extinction level is like rocks that have been altered by some sort of very violent event. And so that could be something like an impact event, like at the site of a meteor crater, you'd have like rocks that are altered, like the crystalline structures like off a little bit. So maybe that's from the volcanism. The camp is what it's called, volcanism, or maybe it's from an impactor. People are questioning.
Say like big earthquake causing
A seismite, yeah, kind of thing, like a violent shift. Yep. And so what's interesting about this one is that this is like one of the most poorly known because a lot of the rocks aren't very well constrained in terms of their age of the big five. But you guys can see here, there is one of these eruptions. We have the rocks of that eruption, that lava lip. It's during Pangea. Pangea breaks up as we get into the Jurassic, and this is also when we see high levels of extinction. Here are those camp lava beds. If I show you on the map, maybe I don't have the map here. If you go back and look at the lab maps, the camp volcanic pieces, the lava flows from this camp. By the way, camp is Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, CAMP. And so those rocks are today here, Brazil, here, West Africa, here, Southern Europe, here, East Coast of the United States. All of these rocks can be dated and studied, and they're the same big event. And so it's another one of these things we have for like the evidence of Pangea. This amount of lava is happening in the same place that we know the Atlantic Ocean is starting to form as Africa and North America pull apart tectonically. One of my absolute favorite, like just little facts. Does anybody know this place? So that's Manhattan. There's the Empire State Building. That's Manhattan right there. On the shores of the Hudson River are these giant lava cliffs. This is where Bruce Wayne's house is. The bat plane comes out of a cliff. It's these cliffs. These cliffs are made of camp lava from the Triassic mass extinction. So there's Gotham. You could put Wayne Manor up here. Batman, not Batman. Nobody knows he's Batman. But Bruce Wayne lives up on top of the camp eruptions, which is really cool, right? I just think that's a fun thing. So if you guys are interested in this, you can check it out. We talked a lot about the details of the end Permian extinction. The end Triassic is very, very similar signals. It's just like a little bit less severe. We still, though, do have lots of turnover. Yeah, Trevor.
I'm just wondering, what does the camp stand for again?
Central Atlantic. Do I even say it? Nope, it just says camp right there. Magmatic Province. If you Google camp volcano, you'll get it.
Central Atlantic.
Province. So here's what I care about for you guys, because again, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of volcanism like we did with the end Permian. Here's our pattern of distribution as we go from the Triassic into the Jurassic for our major tetrapod lineages. So all the different Lis amphibian lineages we can infer or have fossils of in the Triassic, including caecilians and frogs. Salamanders, there you go. Here's a bunch of our mammal fossil record, our Synapsida fossils. Here's a whole bunch of reptiles. Here's a whole bunch more reptiles. Okay. Tell me about, I'm not asking you to like guess why this one survived and this one didn't. That's not what's important to me. But what's the pattern here? Like, what are some things that are standing out to you about this distribution of extinction and the animals that are actually in the Jurassic into the Cretaceous? Chat about that for a second.
That has two legs and lives on land and is one. Yeah. It's the only one that's kind of like weird, except they don't have shirts. The squammy animals do. Crocodiles, that's like it's everything like that has single limbs that I'm all on words.
So I do not expect right now you to like identify some features of who survived and who didn't. I don't think that's possible. What I like though is you guys have met so many weirdo clades of animals that radiated and did amazing things with their morphology and their anatomy in the context of the Triassic. So many lineages go extinct. mammal line lineages, stem reptile lineages, crown reptile lineages, all go extinct at this boundary. The animals that do survive, I hope, are looking pretty familiar to you. We're starting to leave the world where you have to remember, what's that name that he said last week about that one weird fish? We're getting to the point where it's like, oh no, the only amphibians around are frogs and salamanders, and well, the reptiles are like, lizards and turtles and crocodiles, and there's some other extinct things, but the ones that have their names up here, these are the modern tetrapod groups that we still have right now. And that's what I think is kind of fun about the Jurassic. It's getting to be, and this has been true the whole class, I am aware, but it's getting to be increasingly familiar, this time at the scale of like the big clades of vertebrates, big clades of tetrapods actually on land. We're getting down to being like pretty much list amphibians, mammals, squamates, turtles, crocs. There's a bunch of other cool dudes who are still around. And they are going to be around for the whole Jurassic and whole Cretaceous, like these marine reptiles, like pterosaurs, like big dinosaurs. But if you take away these four, most of the remaining groups are fossils of animals that we still have today, members of those lineages today. All of these wild ones, unfortunately, are extinct here. I like to look at a diagram like this and be like, that is a weird animal, right? You guys don't think this one is weird because you've seen them your whole life, but that's a crazy animal. And I like to think about turtles as being one of these things that made it through and is just like part of the Triassic explosion that's still around. This one is weird. These ones are weird. For whatever reason, this one is part of our modern fauna. These ones went extinct at the boundary. Bipedal crocodile thing, extinct at the boundary. So really cool. You're seeing a really important transition here as we go from the Triassic, which is a time of evolutionary experimentation, into the Jurassic. There's, of course, tons of diversity and tons of experimenting all throughout the Jurassic, all throughout the Cretaceous that we're going to talk about. But the clades are starting to be, I hope, pretty familiar to you. Not a bunch of weird stuff you've never heard of before. Okay, let's talk about the Jurassic. This is your Jurassic summary slide. Big thing about the Jurassic is it is characterized by that breakup of Pangea. If you put the Jurassic and Cretaceous together, you have a period that is quite long, almost 150 million years long, 200 or so to 66. So we could say 135 million years long of like relative high temperatures, relative wet planet, and an increasing pattern of the continents breaking up. You go from like maximum connection in Pangea, and then we get to the Cretaceous, it's like almost maximum disconnection. Almost all the continents are their own islands. Part of that is because water levels are up quite high. We think there's things happening within the oceans that affect the morphology of the ocean floor. And so a lot of water gets pushed up onto the continents. Many continents are flooded in the Jurassic and definitely into the Cretaceous. When we talk about vertebrates, tons of teleos. Like you learned last week, the true sharks and rays are showing up. The elasmobranchs of today are showing up in this time period. Lots of marine reptiles in the waters as dominant and quite large animals, although there's a diversity of small ones too. Those ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. This is a plesiosaur here with these big flippers. Lots of interesting things going on with secondarily marine tetrapods in the Jurassic. And then the big story up on land, I think one is you kind of keep the plants that were growing in the Permian, and they keep diversifying. Recognizable members of today's ginkgos and cycads and conifers. Those are kind of the dominant plants with lots of ferns. But then we get these dinosaur-dominated ecosystems, ones that you've probably seen documentaries of on whatever, Discovery or National Geographic or whatever, PBS, your whole life. Big dinosaurs, and then up in the trees and in the water, little lizards, little mammals, little turtles, but mostly a dinosaur story. There's a lot going on than just dinosaurs, but this is where the Jurassic really sets itself apart. As you guys might have seen a second ago, in the Triassic, dinosaurs do evolve, dinosaurs show up. Dinosaurs are around from 30 million years of the Triassic, but they're kind of just another clade on the landscape. Some of those big crocodile relatives, some of those therapsids are also the big herbivores, the big carnivores. Dinosaurs are there, they're not ecologically the biggest things. Once we get into the Jurassic, almost every really large animal is in this clade Dinosauria exclusively, almost. That's pretty interesting and quite different than their Triassic origins. Here's our Cretaceous summary slide because we're about to go through so much dinosaur stuff. So we just went from talking about 50 million years for 2 weeks, the Triassic. Now I'm talking about 135 million years all at once. Here's the Cretaceous breakup. Do me a favor before I blab. Look at that map of the Cretaceous. What seems fun and interesting? I love the Cretaceous maps, probably the most. Okay, go ahead and chat about that.
Yeah. North Texas is totally flooded. You got California, we got this. Most of Europe's underwater.
Not against roads.
It's just jealous. Exactly. Yeah, but the reason they don't make it look like that. Yeah, you have to take the shallow areas and imagine it is like that. So I see Rex in British. So I mean, it's worse Rex itself. It's almost like yeah, that's a crazy species of polar other Tyrannosaurs from like other places like Appalachia. Literally falling like Appalachia. So
All right, so what's fun about the Cretaceous map? What are we talking about? What are you guys talking about on the Cretaceous map? Yeah, I can show you the Jurassic. I mean, it's like, okay, there's a lot of water getting in between continents, but in the Cretaceous, it's like there's a lot of water up on those continents. What were you talking about? Any one in particular? I feel like you guys can start to see, like, I know what that place is now. It's a little bit weird when it's like that. When it's got like that, you're like, oh, okay, I'm starting to see it. Were you talking about any one place? Okay. A lot of shallow seas up on continental crusts, for sure. What else? Let me hear somebody else. What are you guys talking about, you two? What's the Western Interior Seaway? Hudson Bay, the Arctic Ocean, and the Gulf of Mexico, all connected by water. You could swim between them all. There's a very famous, what was it? Western Interior Seaway, the WIS. There's a very famous book called Oceans of Kansas. Most of the best fossils of these ecosystems are from Kansas, which is hilarious, I hope, because Kansas is not near the ocean, quite famously today. But it's where you go to find these fossils. You get it in Africa. You get it in Europe, hilariously, in Western Asia. What other things people talk about besides water? Yeah, Trevor?
We talked about the continents that were separated by the Western Interior Seaway, like Armenia and Africa.
Oh yeah, we have special names for these like pieces of North America when they're separated by water. That's true. We'll talk about those. Yeah.
I noticed less deserts than kind of little.
Oh yeah, certainly less than in the on the Pangaean supercontinent for whatever reason. We have good evidence from the geological record, and of course we can do climate modeling, weather prediction modeling on continents. It's fun. It's like, yeah, there's gigantic deserts that are making huge parts of Pangaea inhospitable. When you have like maximum like cooling ocean on all sides of you, it's like a much greener place, kind of everywhere. Fair, 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 fair. I think I heard Cody say Madagascar looks the same.
Yeah, dude.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that place has all these weird animals that it only, yeah, there is. It's because it kind of parked a long time ago and hasn't moved since. Yeah, bro. Go. I'll help it.
It's just a ton of little islands.
All of Europe into Western Asia is totally water and flooded. There's islands. I want you guys to be biologists for a minute and think about the biogeography. What's it like to be a clade of evolving little tetrapods on Pangaea? What's your biogeography like in terms of where you live? What's it like to be a clade of little tetrapods, I don't care what kind, when the world looks like this, which I'm going to say is the anti-Pangaea. I'll let you think about it. What were you going to say?
I was gonna say, like, I don't know if there yet, but it's kind of fun to look at, like, Antarctica. There's like no ice.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
There's Antarctica in the Jurassic. Here's Antarctica in the Cretaceous.
Like, so
What's this place?
Australia.
What's that place?
Something.
It's New Guinea, so it's the same. So Australia, New Guinea, Antarctica. Ooh, so close. There's southern continents that are connected to each other. They're all totally not cold. One thing that's fun about Antarctica that we will talk about is there really is good evidence that like it's dark 3 months of the year. It's just also a warm forest while it's dark for 3 months straight.
Same or similar?
Mhm.
Okay.
It's not cold. It definitely gets dark. So what does that mean for your rainforest trees? You can think about it. In the marine ecosystems of the Cretaceous, getting increasingly modern structure amongst the invertebrates. Hashtag worst oceans ever. That's my opinion. Really a lot of scary stuff in those oceans. We'll talk about them. Birds and snakes and turtles in the oceans. Up on land, the big story of the Cretaceous, I'm going to say, is flowers. The lineage that flowering plants are in must go back much farther in time, but our actual fossil record of plants does not have any true flowers. Flowers to reproduce and then make a fruit that might be eaten. That is a Cretaceous thing. And molecular evidence from living flowering plants today also predicts Cretaceous diversifications of flowers. So you can imagine how, like, once you get flowering plants, which by the way are almost all plants today, that's a Cretaceous transition from conifers, ginkgos, cycads in the Jurassic to flowering plant dominance by the end of the Cretaceous. There's a transition there that we're going to talk about. Lots of great dinosaurs, lots of awesome other things. And then we start to get into the modern, in terms of even families. There's frogs and salamanders and lizard families today that you can go catch in the wild, and there's members of their families alive in the Cretaceous. That's not true for birds and mammals, but we'll talk about why that is when we get there. So those are our summaries. Of course, we're going to come back to these slides many times as we talk about all these awesome organisms. Okay, let's make the transition. And we're going to start off all of our dinosaur lectures. We're going to do sauropodomorphs first, then we're going to do theropods and birds, then we're going to do ornithischians. So let's talk about sauropods across that boundary. You guys saw that there's lots of these interesting prosauropod long-necked dinosaurs in the Triassic. Some of them go extinct at the boundary, some of them cross into the Jurassic. These are two figures from scientific papers recently published, talking about body size and other things. Here's the Triassic, here's the Jurassic. Do me a quick favor and just like talk to your neighbors about what you can see from these two figures.
Okay, so the way I have stuff is really on necessity, so to regulate is the what we in the bottom and so that's having this it's nice little like being honest. I think you can also use because there was some by a structure was not these lines so that kind of makes sense. So I think that when you're finding one for this would have had all of it is the same size.
So the two things that I think are really important to look at is like, yes, animals are getting larger over time. This is a chart here. Here's body mass on the y-axis, and then it's a timeline. And so you can see like there's plenty of smaller sauropodomorphs here. But then once you get into this part of it, once the early Jurassic kind of passes, there's like no dots here. So you lose your smaller, or medium, I should say, bodied sauropodomorphs. It's really only these big ones now after this line. Few survive, but not for long. And then the other thing is, these quadrupedal huge guys do show up in the end of the Triassic. There are true sauropods in the end of the Triassic. You can imagine there was a story as we were learning more and more about dinosaur evolution that you have like prosauropody, bipedal kind of things in the Triassic. They go extinct, and sauropods that are like big quadrupedal long-necked dinosaurs, they show up in the Jurassic. You know, you'd have like a transition across the boundary from this kind to this kind. And I think it's cool that our knowledge now is such that like, no, there's some big-ish sauropods in the end of the Triassic, and there are a couple of these prosauropods that survive for a little while into the Jurassic. So again, I just like that nuance, that subtlety. This body size driven quadrupedality crosses the boundary and then seems to be quite successful. But you know, these guys cross too. They just don't last for that long. So who knows what's going on there. There are some really recently described fossils. Begualia is one of them. Oh yeah, I don't even have it on there. And this is one of these animals that has a lot of really great anatomy that helps us understand these evolutions. Usually, sauropod skulls are very, very hard to find. Their skulls are very light. The bones are quite thin. The bones are very rarely fused together. So when the animal dies, it's very likely that the skull kind of falls apart. So sauropod skulls are quite rare. This is one though from right after the boundary showing us the anatomy of these early sauropodomorphs. And they are true sauropods, getting to be longer necks. How do you make a long neck? What is driving this body size increase? This is like a really fun, active area of research. And on either side of the boundary, there's exciting things happening in this group. Here is our like phylogeny I'm going to use in this class as we talk about sauropodomorphs. So you can see there is a clade called Sauropoda that is monophyletic. I put a little blue dot there. I just called this early sauropods because there's kind of a lot of them and they're a little bit of a grade. But then here's a bunch of clades of different long neck dinosaurs. How much time do we have? Okay, I'm going to jump into this. We're going to come back and talk about these details on Tuesday. Right now, I want to get into something that I think is really fun. Sauropods are one of these groups of organisms that are, for a lot of reasons, I think one of the most important fossil lineages we've ever had. And it's for reasons like this. So I'm going to not tell you what this figure is about, but I bet you could guess. Enjoy yourself as vertebrate people, figuring out what all these things are, and then just make some interesting observations about these things.
About I was going low on size, capability on a point. Observations. So the biggest. They're just. Cervical zone in different stories. Some people's concentrate. Looks like a giant cow. I wanted to get to the air. Right beneath the wet. I got you. In read forward theory of.
There you go.
So
this is a figure that is showing you like the largest members of many, many different vertebrate clades. Hope that's something that maybe would jump out to you. So there's your Giganotosaurus, there's your T-Rex, there's your Triceratops. Here's today's African elephant right there. There's a lady. So what seems interesting or fun? Yeah, right. You are not to the knee or the elbow right here of this Brachiosaurus. There's a skeleton of this animal in Chicago outside, and you can go walk under it and around it because it's a cast, and that's all I do. It's great. Okay, that's the sauropods. What else? What else can we notice? A lot of dinosaurs are quite big. If I took out the two swimmy ones, this whale, that's a mammal, and this big Triassic ichthyosaur, if I took those out, everything else is a land animal. So what's going on? The biggest duckbill ever, the biggest theropods ever. Anybody have anything to say about that? Yeah, Trevor?
They just have adaptations to be really, really efficient, I guess. Like,
well, why? What do you just? I want somebody to say the simple thing out loud.
So something like in the sauropods, for example, we talked about earlier how some of them have like these air.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. All I want is one of you to be like, they are so much bigger than everything else. That's all I'm really looking for here. There's like an order of magnitude situation happening where like you could have a pile of Triceratops. And Triceratops is one of the biggest horned dinosaurs ever. It is maybe the biggest horned dinosaur ever. You could have a pile of Triceratops and it equals one of these. A herd is what you'll read in every book. 10 or 12 elephants are the body mass of one of these really huge sauropods. And so, of course, you're right, Trevor. There's our adaptations that we're going to talk about. But like, these are in a class of their own. The biggest duck-billed dinosaurs, the biggest theropods, the biggest horned dinosaurs, They're all kind of hitting at, this is the biggest land mammal of all time. That's a rhinoceros, by the way. So this is a big rhinoceros. There's a big dinosaur. Here's a big dinosaur. They're all like closely not very far from each other. And then for whatever reasons you're talking about, these ones are hilariously even bigger than everybody else. There's similar like sort of maxima that we seem to hit on land. Sauropods don't do that. They go another like log scale tick up the tree of size. There's an elephant and there's you. Here's the two of the biggest sauropods, Patagotitan. So this is a similar thing. So there's a blue whale. So blue whales are the biggest animals that have ever lived as far as we know. Mass-wise, no question. The living blue whale is the biggest. But like similar body length to Patagotitan, it's just this one has to walk around. This one gets to swim. So there's different pressures, as you might imagine, on that large body size. Here is Patagotitan in Chicago. There's also a Brachiosaurus in Chicago, but this is Patagotitan in the Field Museum. So you can go see it there. The real bones are on the wall, and that's a cast that you could walk between. Like, I want you to really talk to your neighbors for a minute about the fact that this is like an individual. Like this is a guy or a gal in a herd. Okay, just chat about that. Take it in. Like really look at it. And there's 2 bull elephants for scale.
These live in herds. Thanks to all these, but it's in out of and I mean, there's now a lawsuit of I think Titanosaur was for this event. And there's a hospital that's being given over and died, not even because of justice, because it fell. It got still. So he literally can help himself. Yes. In real life. Even though because the not speaking because that's not a happy.
I just imagine it was like some.
And also they don't have the smallest brain. But their brains are pretty small.
So again, I won't ask you for your comments right now because of the interest of time, but like very special to me that this is like an animal. And when you're in that museum, if you ever go, you can be up there on that second floor and like this is take a picture from the second floor because that's just how tall it is, like just looking right at you right there. But it's got eyeballs. It's got, it hatched from an egg that was this big at some point. Yeah.
Grant, question, where was this found?
Patagotitan is from Patagonia. It's from Argentina. Yeah. Argentine fossil. There's several animals. Actually, you know what? What time is it? Yeah, we only have 2 minutes. I won't do the next thing. So the thing that's cool about Patagotitan, Patagotitan is one of these sauropods in this clade, Titanosaurs. There are 3 different sauropods genera in Titanosaurs that are kind of like in a 3-way tie for as big as you could possibly be. They're not actually sister to each other. So they probably represent different times of sauropods hitting what might be the ceiling of how big you can be on this planet, because Earth has a certain amount of gravity. If you're a vertebrate, you have to have some kind of skeleton. People take Patagotitan and the other 2, and you can like measure like the girth of their femora, their femur, and they get that's one of those pillars that's supporting their body weight. And like, even though the thing is like as tall as me as a bone, we're talking about like millimeters of difference between like these 3 giant taxa. So like, is that like, did they hit the ceiling when they got to this size? Because they each individually did it. It's a fun thing to think about. Anyway, I won't have us analyze stuff about sauropods because we don't have enough time, but I hope you think it's cool. We'll talk about long-necked dinosaurs on Tuesday. And I'll see you at the museum on Monday.